Welcome to the Be Well program. I'm Dr. Ted Bender, and I'm a clinical psychologist. My goal in this program is to educate the public about mental health awareness. Today, I'm excited and pleased to interview professional skateboarder and 8-time medalist Paul Rodriguez Jr. Paul, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hello, hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
We're really glad to have you in here. You're obviously at the top of your game. You're one of the best skateboarders in the country. You're an actor, and it's really important when people like you decide to kind of open up and talk about these things freely, because it really helps to reduce the stigma around mental health in this country. And if I had to say that one of the number one goals of this podcast, it is exactly that, reducing stigma. I love talking to athletes that are at the top of their game because, you know, it's not always easy getting there. It was a tremendous amount of hard work, and it's always very intriguing to me how you kind of got to the peak, so to speak. So I was wondering, you know, if you could start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself, your personal journey with mental health, and how it impacted your career in skateboarding.
Yeah, well, I'm Paul Rodriguez. I'm a professional skateboarder. I've been skateboarding for 26 years, and I've been professional for 20 years. It's been a long road. I started when I was 12 years old, and I was just very lucky to find my passion at that age and was able to just dedicate myself all the way to where I'm at now and still have my career going. And I guess my journey with mental health is I've been everywhere from up to down and everywhere in between during those 20 years of my career. I've had some wonderful, amazing times, and I've had some rough, low times. And personally, my philosophy is I always believe in God, and I always try to use God as my foundation in the good and the bad times, first and foremost.
So you've really kind of diverted to your spiritual beliefs to get you through. I think about like people with you and other athletes and that I've interviewed. I always find it very fascinating because you don't get to the peak without a lot of struggle along the way, but you also have something that just other people don't. I don't know if it's internal drive or dedication or that discipline to get out and practice, 8 hours a day or however you did it. How did you balance all that while also kind of keeping a positive self-attitude and not allowing yourself to become depressed or anxious along the way? What are your go-tos, and how did you do all that?
I say a lot of it, especially in the early part when I was still just a young kid with a dream. A lot of it was just being naive.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just being a kid and having fun and just thinking everything was great. I'm just going skating with my friends, and this is really cool, and wouldn't that be awesome to become a professional? And I didn't have other life experience that kind of like fought against what I was believing was possible. And I was very grateful. My father, he's a successful comedian and actor, so I was lucky that I was close to somebody that was living their dream. So by the time I was born, he was already well in the momentum of his career. So I always had a kind of a front row seat of someone living their dream and chasing their goals and whatnot and doing it and succeeding at it. So I think subconsciously at a very early age, that was a big advantage for me because I just thought that's what you were supposed to do. I thought you just have a dream and you go for it. That's what you do. So early on, that was where my mindset was, and that's what kept me positive. It wasn't a struggle to be positive. It was just like, oh, this is cool. I found something I like. This is fun. Let me go out with my friends, and it's great. That stuff didn't come to the more challenges with mental things and anxiety and whatnot didn't come till after I was more of an adult and into my career.
So that makes me think of a few things. So it's interesting because like when you talk about raising kids kind of learn by what they see, not what you tell them to do as parents.
Right.
Your father, also very successful, had that same internal drive that you had for a different career, and you learned by watching his internal drive reach the peak and be very successful, and that discipline was ingrained in you early.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would say so.
At what point, this is more my own curiosity,
Sure.
You're out there skating with your friends and messing around and having fun. At what point did you start to realize that I'm better than these other guys? Like when did that switch flip where you know that you might be able to do this professionally?
It's funny because I didn't realize that I was starting to get better until a while. Like when I first started, a couple of friends I started with were a lot better than me.
Yeah.
They got better quicker.
Yeah.
But for me, again, going back to being naive, I just my vision and my dream and my desire to get better was just so strong that I didn't think about it as like, oh, I'm better or worse. It was just I was having so much fun. I just had so much fun spending my time there. And then also my mentality whenever I started any hobby, from all the way back to like when I was doing little league t-ball as a kid, you know, as soon as I started playing baseball as a kid, I wanted to be in the major leagues. When I first got old enough where we didn't have t-ball and we were being a pitcher, I wanted to be the pitcher because my favorite was Nolan Ryan. I wanted to be just like him, and I was going to be one of the best pitchers ever in my mind, you know. When I was doing karate class, my heroes in karate in martial arts were Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bruce Lee. I'd watch their movies every day, and I would ask my mom to take me to martial arts class, and I would envision that one day I was going to be one of them on the big screen, doing these cool action movies. And then, so every time I got a new hobby, every time something came across me, and I was like, oh, I want to do that now. Like I started playing guitar, and Jimi Hendrix was my favorite, and Nirvana was my favorite band. Oh, I'm going to play guitar. I want to be like the best, like Jimi Hendrix. I'm going to have an amazing band like Nirvana. And that's just the way my mind was wired. And I think that mentality was because of seeing my dad, you know, chase his dream and being successful at it from the beginning. So naturally, when I started skateboarding, and that was the hobby that came across my path, that was the same mentality. Who's the best? Oh, Eric Costin, Tom Penny, Andrew Rams. Oh, those guys are the best. Those are my heroes. Those are my favorite. Okay, I want to be just like them. And one day I'm going to be skating with them in the X Games and having video parts. So I always dreamed when I started a hobby, I never looked at it as a hobby. I looked at it as a calling, as a mission. So I think that's what really got me to keep going and not really get discouraged. I had a great imagination, and I always loved dreaming about these things. So I didn't actually realize that I was like improving and getting better for a while, because I always skated with guys who were older than me too. And a lot of times the older guys were skating longer, and they were much better because they were bigger, more developed physically, and they were stronger. So like I just always thought it was cool to hang out with guys who were better than me, and I can always like be chasing them to get better. So it took a little while till I realized, I guess at the time it seemed like a while, but maybe it was only a couple years. So people really started taking notice that I was improving fast.
As a psychological researcher, I spent many years doing research, and one of the pieces of one of the topics of research I always found fascinating was mastery, right? Where I went to school at Florida State University, there was a professor there that was his whole field was the topic of mastery, and they came up with a number in order to attain
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours. You've heard exactly what I'm talking about.
I read the Robert Greene book.
Yeah, me too. Exactly. So it's you know, I think what you were saying is about, like with baseball and basketball. Like, you know, I remember saying the same thing when I was a kid. The difference though is where I get really interested, because every kid wants to be a Major League Baseball player, or you know, like an NFL player, or you know, a professional skater. So few make it, and that difference. And is why I was asking, that difference in mental capacity, I think, is really where it's at. You had, you know, people that were better than you and that you were spending time with. You had your dad's influence, but there's something there that just kind of pushes you to the next level. And I've always been really fascinated about that aspect of it.
I think it's just finding what you love. You know, for me, I'm very passion driven. If I don't love what I'm doing, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like I was terrible in school, not because I didn't think I wasn't intelligent or couldn't learn or had any type of learning disability. It's just I had no interest. I didn't care. I knew what I wanted to do, and I thought anything else I was doing was wasting my time because I'm supposed to be doing this. You know, I just had this intensity and this passion and excitement. So it never felt like I was sacrificing. It never felt like I was like being disciplined and doing something that I wanted to do in order to do this. Like, this is what I wanted to do. I didn't want anything else. So that's actually been a gift and a curse. As I've gotten older, I realized how it can be a curse as well. Yeah, for me, it was I just lucky and grateful to God that I just found something that I felt like I couldn't live without.
Maybe it was you were able to push away all the distractions through that mentality.
But I didn't even have to.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is like it wasn't that I was pushing anything away. It was that skateboarding was pushing itself so much into my focus that nothing else was even. I didn't even care. So I was very lucky with that.
Switch gears a little.
Yep.
How do you feel the skateboarding community as a whole addresses mental health? What is the skateboarding community's attitude towards mental health? And have you seen that change over the years?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Obviously, everyone being human, we all have various. We all fluctuate in different states of mental health of where we're at. I don't know that a lot of times it was necessarily talked about. Depends how close you are with friends. If you have real close relation with friends, and you guys discuss if you're going through something personal or you having issues, but I don't think a lot of times it's really discussed. I think a lot of people, especially in skateboarding and the era I was coming up, skateboarding can be very critical. We can be very critical of each other, and and a lot of guys develop a mentality where like they're afraid to like completely be themselves because of they're just afraid to maybe be criticized or like if I do this, some of the guys in the core skate community might think, oh, that's whack, or you shouldn't do that, or that's not cool, this isn't cool. And a lot of people tend to get a little like shell shocked from that and are afraid to do anything, so they just play it completely safe. Even with social media, sometimes people, in my opinion, or friends or people I know, they're so over analytical of what to post. It's like, sometimes it's just like, hey man, it's okay, that's you. Sometimes I just look at it as like, as a human being, I'm gonna vary through every type of emotion or thing there is. Sometimes I might be cool, sometimes I might be nerdy, sometimes I might be embarrass myself, sometimes I might be very serious, sometimes I might be goofy, and I just learned to accept that that's just arranged as human beings that we go through, and I just accept it and go for it.
You feel but the community as a whole is kind of pretty closed off to that? Maybe
not as much these days. I think people are getting a little more open, but it's happening at a slower rate.
Yeah.
But definitely in the era I grew up, it was very critical.
Yeah.
Like, don't be a sellout. Don't do this. Stay in this lane. Do this. Do that. Or this is whack. This is lame. This is cool. Like, so yeah, it was a very closed off point. I think it's getting to a place now where I think social media is helping that.
Yeah.
In that instance.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. It's slow but sure, right? It really helps when people who are well known, professional athletes, actors, Hollywood, when people come out and they're talking about their own struggles, and you're seeing that more and more these days, sometimes surprisingly so. But every time that happens, it reduces the stigma a little bit, right? And makes it a little bit more okay for people to talk about how they're really feeling, which you kind of indicated. And it being in the skateboarding community, especially when you were growing up, it was much more closed off. People were really critical of each other. Like you said, social media has opened how we're feeling up to millions.
Yeah. People have more of a platform to talk and find other people who they can relate to, and everybody kind of can find a channel or an avenue that they can like connect with. And I think in that instance, social media has been beneficial.
Yeah. You face a lot of pressure as a professional athlete, and you face a lot of pressure to kind of maintain a high level of performance. What kind of strategies do you use to kind of keep yourself centered in order to continue to perform that way?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, man, I like I said, I believe in God, and I don't necessarily subscribe to a specific religion, but I do believe in God. So every day I pray. Every morning, every night, I pray when I wake up, when I go to bed. I meditate every morning, every night, just breathing and just, trying to center myself. I feel like that's been something as I've got older and implemented consistently has been really helpful. And I just try to like put it in perspective, like what is pressure? To me, I've come to think of pressure is really something you put on yourself. You know what I mean? Like I just really love to skateboard, and I've always really wanted to be really good at it. So I'm probably the hardest on myself. I'm not usually too worried about anyone's opinion of me, good or bad. I'm more so focused on like how do I feel about myself and what I'm doing, and at any given point of life, like do I feel good about how I've been lately, or do I feel bad about how I've been lately? And sometimes if I don't feel like I've been as on point as I would like to be, I'll beat myself up and take myself down a downward spiral until finally I can't take it anymore, and then I say, that's it, I'm changing everything, and I get back on it. And I'm sure most humans, like, we all go
Yeah.
back and forth between that to various degrees. But I lost my train of thought right there. But
Well, I ask because I do hear a lot of similarities in athletes who have really kind of, reached the pinnacle and like have had great careers, whether it's NBA, NFL, baseball, whatever. They say similar things. Spirituality seems to be a real common thread. Mindfulness-based meditation, you said you kind of used in your daily life, and then really being, at least as immune as you can to the criticism, because you're probably your own worst critic, I would imagine. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
I want me to do better than anyone else wants me to do, or I want to do better than anyone else wants me to do bad. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, therein may lie another one of the secrets of the very small percentage of people that actually make it. You're your own worst self-critic. You're also your own greatest motivator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're your own best fan too, if you want.
Yeah. As a professional skater, I imagine you've had your fair share of injuries.
Yes, I certainly have. My biggest injury, or most serious injury, was I blew out my right knee almost 5 years ago now. Tore my ACL, both meniscus, MCL, and had bone contusions all in one go. So I did a nice little number on my knee, and that was the first time I ever needed a surgery for anything. So that was definitely threw me for a loop mentally, and that was like almost a full 2 years of recovery till I was like fully 100% confident being back. So that was a little journey.
Skaters get injured a lot. Right, and I'm sure you've seen your fair share of people getting hooked on opioids. Or how did you stay away from that? Because I'm sure with that injury, you probably had a pretty easy script. People get hooked so quickly. Is that a big problem in the industry? Do you see a lot of that?
I've seen it a couple times. I don't know how big of a problem it is, but I think even if it's only happening to a small amount of people, that's a bigger problem than it needs to be. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Even just at that level. But luckily for me, I went into my surgery already kind of being aware of it. I had never been prescribed pills for anything until after my surgery. And I just made a deal with myself. I said, all right, right when I got out of surgery, they prescribed me, I think it was Percocet or something. And I told myself, all right, I'm just going to use one order or one bottle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to refill my prescription.
Right.
So I made a bet with myself that, okay, just take this for the first however long, I think it was 2 weeks that it lasted, that first prescription. And after that, maybe Advil or Tylenol or whatever, but just don't take a refill. And I was lucky that I didn't, that I stuck to that, I didn't actually continue to use more. And I'm grateful, thank God for that.
What made you even conscious of that? A lot of people that get a prescription, they don't do this as much anymore, but you go to the dentist, you get a molar pulled, there's 30 pills.
Yeah.
Like most people don't even think about that. I'll just take
Right.
What made you even...
Well, because I had seen a couple people that I know who had been through a number of surgeries, and I'd seen the pills kind of take them out of hand, and then them continuing to use it beyond when they were already healed, and I'd seen that, and so I know myself too. I know that when I really like something, I go all in, so I was nervous about myself for that. So I went in already cautious, because even at the end of that one bottle that I took, I noticed towards the middle of the end, like when it was time, I think it said take it every 4 hours, or if I remember correctly. I remember like counting down, like, is it almost time? Is it almost time? And I remember like low key kind of being excited for that time to take it again. So even that was kind of scary to me, that the fact that I was looking forward to my next pill.
Yeah. So you kind of went in with an awareness. You've been exposed to it in the industry because other people have had similar injuries or worse. You've seen what had happened to them. You know yourself, because you're kind of an all-in kind of guy, and you had the wherewithal to make sure that it didn't
thank
become a
God.
problem.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen, it was scary for a few people I've seen, and I didn't want that to be me.
Well, kudos to you for even being aware of that in the first place, because most
Thank you.
people get injured like that, they just think, here, this is medicine.
Yeah.
You know, I need more of this medicine.
Maybe if I had never seen it, I
Yeah.
might have just
Yeah.
had that same attitude as well.
It happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Can you share any specific moments or experiences in your career where your mental health really was challenged, maybe a low point, and then talk a little bit to our audience about how you overcame them?
Yeah. That injury specifically was a great example. Up until that point, that injury happened about 5 years ago. I was 33 at the time, and I had already had a long career in skateboarding. I'd been very fortunate, never had any serious injuries, maybe some sprained ankles here and there, and cuts and bruises and whatnot. But like, that's the first time I ever got fully taken out of skateboarding since I was 12 years old. I had never not skated for anything longer than a month, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's the first time. And it threw me for a big loop. I had no idea what to do with myself. I had no idea if I'd be able to recover and bounce back and even be able to skate at a high level anymore. I had no idea. Should I just consider retirement? Should I consider just seeing what happens and trying to keep going? So that was a big, it threw me for a huge loop. And again, man, I just relied on prayer. I just relied on prayer. I just prayed every day. I was confused. I just said, God, I'm confused. I just asked, just show me, guide me, show me how to get through this. I'm feeling bummed. I'm feeling depressed, but I know everything happens for a reason. And I'm going to trust you with this, and I'm going to just take it one day at a time. And it was really hard at points. And then somewhere around maybe the halfway point, I kind of started realizing that I started to look at it as a blessing in disguise. I was able to look back and be grateful for a lot of things that maybe I was not realizing that I wasn't being as grateful as I should be for. I was maybe being a little bit complacent, a little bit on autopilot, and just kind of going through the motions. Wasn't necessarily really pushing and challenging myself to continue to get better anymore. And at one point I remember it just kind of switched, and I decided to look at the recovery of this as that next challenge, as that thing. Because, at that point I'm grateful it didn't happen when I was maybe 10 years younger, because I would have been right in the heat of my prime, right on my come up, and who knows if I would have had the maturity at that age to see it in a positive way. So I decided to look at this as okay, I had felt good, like I accomplished everything and more that I wanted to, that I dreamt about as a kid, but I never dreamt about this. But I was like, all right, this is the one thing I've never conquered. And all my heroes who I've ever looked up to in any field have had some type of serious obstacle that they had to overcome in order to really reach that level of greatness. So I just made this story in my head of well, if you really want to be considered great, if you really want to be considered legend, you got to show how you overcome adversity. And so I just started making this script in my head that I'm going to come back better than ever. I can do this and do this, and I just decided that's what I was going to go after.
So that's the power of positive thinking, right? So you took the rehab almost as the next challenge instead of wallowing in self-pity for 2 years or however long. You kind of took that as kind of really focused your mind on coming back stronger.
Absolutely.
What about support system? Who'd you rely on to get you through that? Who did you rely on emotionally and mentally to get you through those times?
At those early times, at the time when I got injured, I had a long-time girlfriend. She was very helpful in those early stages, especially when I was after the surgery, when I really couldn't move very much. She was, there, helping take care of me and supported me in those early times. And my trainer and my physical therapist were big.
Yeah.
I had a couple close friends who I had conversations with who gave me some good advice. My friend Chris, my friend Brian, I remember one time Chris giving me some real healthy advice and told me, that sometimes that pain that you feel, that internal pain, that sadness, whatever it is, try leaning into it. Try just letting it be there. Try not avoiding it. Try not ignoring it. Lean into it. Let it be, because that's the only way that's going to be able to process and dissipate. And I remember at the time not really understanding what he meant and not wanting to be accepting of that, but I gave it a go, and I just kind of let the pain just sit with me and just accept it and not judge it, not label it, not say this sucks or this is good, this is bad. Just this just is a feeling that's there, and I just have to let it pass, just like anything else. And between friends like that and people in my life like that, and staying, in faith, that's really what helped me pull through.
I like that. Lean into it. Oftentimes when we're feeling nervous or anxious or sad or depressed or whatever the case may be, most people's first instinct is to try to numb it, right? Or figure out a way around it. Anxiety is a great example. People will go to great lengths to relieve their anxiety, right? Whether it's through alcohol or drugs, or it's through exercise or spirituality or however you mention it, but really kind of leaning into the emotion, not judging it, like you said, and just kind of accepting it. And then again, your mindset, again, I think is what kind of comes back to that difference between every little kid who wants to be an MLB player to, people that actually make it in that sport or in their whatever their profession is. One other thing I want to talk to you about, and I know that this is a big part of your life, is that there's a recent study that came out that showed pretty clearly that physical fitness and exercise can be as effective in treating depression as antidepressant medications. This is something I've been saying my whole career. Like, I didn't know for sure, but now the data is really starting to show and support it. I've been saying to anyone who would listen that if I had a patient come into treatment, the first 3 things I would fix would be regular sleep, regular diet, and regular exercise. Sounds like now the science is starting to catch up and to show very clearly that exercise can be as effective for treating depression. I know that's got to be a big part of your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your routine, what you do to stay healthy, and any recommendations you have for our audience?
Yeah. And first of all, like, without trying to sound too crass or whatnot, like, doesn't that seem obvious? Like, it seems so obvious to me. Like, do nice things to your body, laugh, exercise, eat good. Like, doesn't that just seem obvious that would put you in a better position to be in a better mental state?
I've always said, personally for me, my therapy is in the iron in the gym. Right? And it has been since I was 18 years old, right? And that's how I've always dealt with my own issues and kept going on, working in this field especially because it can be very draining. So to me it seemed pretty obvious, but now the science and the data are starting to come out and actually show it. So it shows where we are as a society, the fact that we even needed the data.
That to be studied
exactly.
when, like, you can be your own experiment in that sense, without trying to be too crass about it. I thought it was obvious. But my routine, I have a personal trainer. I work with my personal trainer. I've been working with him for 10 plus years. I'm with him 2 times a week. He knows my body. He knows what my goals are, and he puts me through a really tough workout for what I would consider tough for my level. And then most other days I skate every day, and that's pretty much been my routine for years and years and years. I'm not exactly militant about how I eat or anything, but I definitely, usually most mornings I make a smoothie at home with some good greens in there and my protein shake and good fruits and stuff like that. I take a multivitamin. I'm not too over the top militant with it, but I definitely make sure I start the day with that type of stuff. I'll get a little loose here and have a burger and stuff and whatnot, but I just try to make sure I get some greens every day in my body, some fruit, and try not to go too crazy on the red meats and stuff. You know what I mean? I just try to be mindful of it, and I hope as I grow and as I get older, I'll refine that more and more. But I food has been my hardest area of discipline for sure, because I definitely get a big appetite sometimes and just go for it. But
I think most of America can relate.
Sure. But I'm definitely mindful to start my day off with a good start at least.
I think for our listeners out there too, some people hear, oh yeah, diet and exercise is really important and it'll help you feel less depressed and more mentally stable. And it almost makes them angry because like, oh yeah, like you said, it's obvious. But how am I supposed to get started? You know, you have a personal trainer. But what I want to reiterate to people out there who are listening to this show is when we talk about exercise being a very good antidepressant, it can be something as simple as 10 to 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Get out there, take a walk,
Take a
get some
walk.
sunlight, you know, do a little bit of calisthenics, start small and
Yeah.
build those behaviors over time.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I personally have an intense workout because I have a professional goal.
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? That's my goal is to, and that's my job is to maintain my instrument. I suppose that's all of our jobs, really, the job of life, if you want to have a long, healthy life. But yeah, and I think it starts, all of it starts with your mindset, right? Like, if you already have a mindset, like you just said, you might get a little frustrated or irritated hearing those things. Like, I think maybe it starts with, all right, well, like, why am I upset about this? Why does the idea of exercising upset me? What is it? Am I already thinking in a downward spiral? Because your body's only going to do what your mind tells it to do, right? And if your mind's already thinking negative, rough things, you're only going to make your body do actions that are going to be harmful to itself. So it's like, I don't know how to tell people where to start with that. I don't know what to say other than just at least realize that it starts with the mind. It's not about, I think maybe some people think that like successful people are just lucky or it's an accident or this or that. And if that's already your mindset, then that should be a red flag to yourself to realize, like, wait a minute, like let me relook at how this works, and I don't know, man, just start studying mindset and really, I don't know how to I don't have all the answers, but
The really
starts in the mind.
the great ones, like I've read a ton of literature on Kobe Bryant, for example, and his trainer. Was also one of Michael Jordan's trainers, and just about and Ray Allen, and then the things that they did, and the amount of effort that they put into it, and their mindset always was the most important piece.
Well, yeah.
A lot of people say like, oh, Jordan was just born the greatest basketball player.
He was
No.
not. He was got cut from a high school basketball team. He was
That's
the shortest person in his family. His brother was better than him, and everybody was like Tom Brady. Same thing. He got drafted so late. He almost didn't think he was going to make it to the NFL. He was second string, and he just, there's examples that you can go on of people who, and then on the flip side, there's people who were told their whole life, oh, you're gonna be great, you're gonna be amazing, you're gonna go far, and then they never turn out to be anything. So you have examples of all sides of it. You got guys who were first round draft picks, and you name it. What was his name? Sam Bowie. The same year that Jordan got drafted, he was the top pick, and he went to the Trailblazers, and I'm pretty sure most people aren't familiar with who that is. So how you start should never be the indicator of how you're going to finish or where you're going to go. You know what I mean? Like, good or bad. If you start off good, that doesn't mean it's going to all go good for you. You have to keep up with it. And if you start off bad, that doesn't mean that's what you're destined to be. That just means, like, okay, maybe I do in this category have some more work to do than some others or not. But in the long run, over time, your mentality and your consistent actions will show over time. It'll all shake out where you're supposed to be based off your mindset and your actions.
Consistency over time. I like that. Switching gears a little bit, I wanted to see what your experience has been, and maybe within the skating community or what you've seen out there living in California. The fentanyl crisis has reached epidemic levels, where we lost 100,000 people to overdose death last year, and we're likely going to break that record again.
Scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's been really the kind of the main focal point of my career as an addiction psychologist. And we battle it every single day. It's getting cut into cocaine. It's getting laced into marijuana. It's like into drugs you wouldn't normally think it would be anywhere near, and that's why we're seeing so many accidental overdoses. I wonder what your experience with that has been, either in the skating world or with people that you know, or just living in California. How have you experienced that?
Well, I'm very grateful. So far, I have not come across that, and I pray to God I don't ever have to come across anyone I know or just anything of that nature. It's sad. I have peripherally been aware of it. I've been seeing all the billboards popping up about it.
Yeah.
And it scares me. Like, I'm not sure what even fentanyl was created for.
It's usually used as like an anesthetic during surgery, or for like terminal cancer patients who are in tremendous amount of pain. It was never made to be used recreationally on the street.
Well, a lot of these drugs that are now, like the pills we were talking about earlier, none of it was intended that way. Yeah, but I don't know, man. It's scary. How do you stop it? What do you do? I have no idea. I think, you can try and get to kids while they're young and help them develop their mindset, their mentality, and guide them in the right way as best you can. As far as for people who are already older and are already in it and having struggles, I'm not sure what to say. I feel for you. I pray for you. Hope you, can have a good support system and work through it, because there's no way that can be easy. Like, once you're in the throes of addiction, it's so difficult to get out of, and I can only imagine the more addictive and the more intense these drugs are, how you probably feel like you're stuck or you feel like you're hopeless, and it's
You mentioned something though
tough.
that I try to remind people of a lot: prevention, right? You mentioned kind of getting at them when they're younger, preventing. I would imagine you probably have a legion of young fans who look up to you and say the same thing. I want to be a professional skateboarder, and your voice is very powerful to that group of people and across the country, across the world, and it can be. I've always felt very strongly that prevention in the first place is the way to go. So you heard it first here, kids. If you're a Paul Rodriguez fan and you're into skating and you want to be a professional skateboarder, there's no room for any of this nonsense and garbage in your life.
No,
right?
it's and the kids, I'm a father. I have a teenage daughter, and so I'm terrified, of
I'm with you there.
these
brother.
type of things,
I got too,
and the things that they come across and the pressures they feel and the peer pressure that's out there. I just want her to know, I just want her teach her to have respect for herself, be her own person, be her own leader. It's hard when you're young and impressionable, and sometimes maybe people don't have the best influences at home. It's rough, but when you're so young, you might not realize how much life you actually have left to live, and just because things are a little weird or strange or going weird right now at this age, like, I promise you blink and you'll be 20 years older, and then you'll blink again and you'll be another 20 years older. Like, just know that life keeps going on if you allow it to. Just because you feel confused or you feel like you're in a tough spot right now, that doesn't mean it's going to last forever,
Another thing that's changed too is when I was growing up, and probably the same for you, like experimenting back then, especially in the 90s, right, was maybe some alcohol from your dad's liquor cabinet or a little bit of marijuana, right? Nowadays, kids experiment, and it's street pills.
With scientific stuff,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is scary. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough. I was very fortunate that I had something that I loved very young, and I never found myself really around anybody who was doing any serious drugs. Of course, in the skate world, I've been around plenty of people who smoke some weed and have some drinks, but like, it's been, even as an adult and going to parties, and I've very rarely seen anything harder than those type of things, and I think I've just been blessed in that way to just kind of try and surround myself with like-minded people who have a bigger vision for themselves, who have goals, who have dreams. I would say that's a big thing too, to avoid getting into those bad situations. Is like, really, really be mindful of the type of people you put yourself around, the type of people you hang out with, good influences, and you guys will help strengthen each other and build each other up. Equally, if you're around the wrong people, you guys will break each other down and pull each other down, and
That's some pretty good advice. really be mindful of the people that you put around yourself. And like you said, you've done it by really focusing on people that have similar goals and aspirations, and not surrounding yourself with negative influence.
As best I possibly can, you know.
Yeah. Just a few more questions.
Sure.
Kind of being an ambassador of the skating world, what would you like to see change in the future when it comes to mental health support and awareness in the skateboarding community?
I'm not really sure. I get confused this day and age sometimes of saying the right thing or the wrong thing. You know, people can jump on you for if you don't understand where they're coming from and whatnot. And I'm not sure what needs to change. But one thing I will say is, and everybody, this is an easy thing to do, but like what really needs to change is I think more people need to give themselves more credit and more responsibility for themselves. Like, external circumstances don't have to dictate your outcome. Like, if the stronger you are inside, the stronger you are internally, the more you know who you are, the more you know where you want to go, the more you can be your own leader, the better off I think you'll be. Like, I think the change starts from within, personally. So I don't know how to change the outside world, and that will never be something I necessarily could change, but I know I can change myself from the inside, and that's what I try to work on. And try to be, less judgmental of others. We're all humans. We're all stuck in these bodies. We're all living on this ball of dirt. We're all going to go through the same ups and downs. We're going to all have our heart broken at some time. We're going to all have the best day of our life at some point. We're all going to cry. We're all going to lose somebody. We're all going to get sick or this. So like, the more we can like maybe be a little more compassionate towards one another, that'll be super helpful. But I think for me personally, I go within and I pray. I just go inside myself. I talk to God, and I just have a conversation with God, and I just ask for that guidance, because I think it really starts from within. You have to be the change you want to see in the world.
Yes. We talked a lot about mental health and and depression and things that can happen and how to overcome them. You've given a lot of really, really great advice on how you have managed to stave that off and stay focused on your career. And continue to better yourself even during times of great turmoil, being benched for multiple years with a severe knee injury. For fun, what's your greatest moments? When you think back on your career, what's your top one or two favorite moments?
Ooh, I've been thankful. Thank God, man. I've been fortunate in my world. I've been able to accomplish everything I dreamed of. I guess, to get my first signature shoe on Nike SB was a huge moment for me. But I think the biggest accolade that I've received was from my peers, was from the industry, the skate industry itself. Back in 2012, Trans World magazine, it was a big skateboard magazine back then, and they had an article, or they dedicated a whole issue to the most influential skaters of the past 30 years, the 30 most influential skateboarders of the past 30 years. And I made that list, and that was huge to me, because that was my peers, the industry, the people who are the shot callers of the industry, felt that I deserved to be on that list. So to me, that was a huge compliment, and I was in the mix. The other 29 guys most of them were heroes I watched and looked up to and wanted to be like one day. So the fact that I was able to make it in that was probably something. It's invaluable. That's something I could never top, I feel like, and no one could ever take that from me. So that one's the most special.
That's incredible. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, brother.
Lastly, any specific books, podcasts, mental health resources that have really helped you through your career that you'd recommend to others in the skateboarding community, or up and comers, or just anyone in general? Anything?
Yeah, absolutely. A book that or two books that I've read multiple times and will do over the course of my life. I just always keep going back to these books. One is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That one's a very cool book. Very helped me so much, especially as I get older. I understand. Even every time I listen to it on audio because I like his voice. But every time I re-listen to it, I see a new aspect of it and kind of absorb something new. And then another one is Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Great books,
It's
both
a
of them.
great book. And those two, I kind of always come back to. Even if I don't read them from beginning to end, I'll read certain chapters of each one, and just over the years, I'll just keep them close and listen to those. And they always they're like brand new every time.
Excellent. Any events coming up? Anything you want to talk about or alert our audience about?
Well, it's almost summertime, so Street League is coming back.
Great.
Our first contest is in Chicago, April 29th, so that'll be exciting. And other than that, I'm just working on street skating, trying to film another video part this year. Hopefully, I'll put one out by the end of this year, and maybe do an interview in like Thrash or something, hopefully, for that. That's really what it is. Just keeping it simple and focusing on fewer things to hopefully do them better.
Great. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Be Well Network podcast. It was
My
great
pleasure.
having you here
Thank you.
today. Your presence is helping people see that it's okay to speak about mental health, and that is really the mission of this podcast. To our audience, if you or a loved one is struggling, contact the Be Well Network. There is help for today's life obstacles. Until next time, I'm Dr. Ted Bender. Be well.